Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I am Marc Givler, joined by Chip Minnich. We are down to our final three. This is our third to last Big Ten schedule breakdown. We are looking at all 18 Big Ten teams, looking at their schedules, talking trap games, big games, best and worst case scenarios, etc. We just did USC, so it's only fitting we now do UCLA. Deshaun Foster era is in its second year. He's starting to pick up some traction in recruiting, but that's kind of the future. The present, I think, looks a little more difficult for him this year. I thought he lost some very good players to the NFL. There's some guys he's got to replace that I'm not yet convinced the program is in a position to just kind of reload yet. But I like the progress he's had off the field and think he's going in the right direction. I know, Chip, you've kind of been impressed with Foster as well. What do you see this year in terms of like expectations? Are fans, do they need to be reasonable this year? As far as, I laugh at that, fans being reasonable, but is a year two slippage, if that happens, is that concerning to you? Kind of, I guess, what are your thoughts on year two here?
I think he's definitely has UCLA going in the right direction. And I was smiling when you said about fans being reasonable, because if you're a UCLA fan, you certainly believe that UCLA football can and should be doing better than they have over the last few years. I just believe that Deshaun Foster, considering just the turmoil that was going on with the athletic director and Chip Kelly, that I think that maybe I'm mistaken. If UCLA fans want to come at me and say, "Oh no, like he should be doing far better than than you're giving him credit for." But I just think that the way that everything happened, and Deshaun Foster has, he is Bruin through and through. It's one of these things where, year two, there might not be a tremendous amount of positive progress, but I do think that is the direction that he is taking UCLA football.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Did not inherit the greatest of situations, as you mentioned too, and then of course like Dante Moore transfers, and
right.
So I think he's done a commendable job so far. This schedule is, I think it's like sneaky tough.
Yeah.
It doesn't jump way off the page. It's like, oh, this is brutal, but there's not an FCS school on there. I don't know. There's some games here that I think are very tricky. But I'll read the schedule here first before we go into it. Obviously, one of the cooler opening week games. They're going to host Utah at 11 o'clock Eastern on Fox on Saturday night to open the season. And then they go at UNLV, home New Mexico, bye week at Northwestern, home Penn State, at Michigan State, home Maryland, at Indiana, bye, home Nebraska, at Ohio State, home Washington, at USC. It's one of those schedules where I don't see a lot of layups. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, that's definitely fair. That opening game, that's an underrated, challenging game. Utah is, say what you will, they're not overly flashy, but Utah is, probably one of the more solid programs, just kind of consistently, physical on defense. So that's a terrific.
They're my big sleeper. They're my big sleeper this year. Maybe nationally, but in the Big 10, or the Big 12, they're plus 700 to win the Big 12. That's an incredible value bet. I think they're a dark horse, 10-2 playoff team. But,
No. I'm glad that you brought that point up, because I think the way you characterize them as a sleeper pick, I think that's a terrific point. I think going on the road to UNLV, that's gonna be a kind of game where UCLA should be favored, but you just never know, when it comes to, what kind of an atmosphere. And then the New Mexico game, so I can see UCLA starting out 2-1. And then that's when you start looking at Big Ten games, it's kind of like, all right, how do we get to that magic number of 6? Because that's kind of, you mentioned the fact that there's been a lot of turnover within the coaching staff, the roster, trying to build up the talent. It's going to be difficult, I think, for Foster to get this team to a bowl game. I'm not saying impossible. It's just going to be difficult.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's kind of what I was hinting at kind of in my lead in to the show is I think there's a scenario where the results aren't as good this year as they were last year, but that it doesn't mean the program has taken a step back or is moving in the wrong direction. I think there's a scenario where the results aren't there this year, some competitive losses maybe, and you can still feel good about Deshaun Foster moving forward, because I just don't think the program was left in a position where you can reload and lose NFL guys and have a 5-star quarterback transfer out 2 years ago and just reload all these key positions, either via the portal or via, plugging in freshmen and things like that. It's just so difficult. They lost some really good players on defense last year. I still don't know that they have a ton of weapons offensively. And the schedule's pretty unforgiving. You start with Utah, who, again, I think is a dark horse. Like, I can, full disclosure, I have I don't bet the mortgage or anything like that, but I have a small bet on Utah to win the Big 12 at plus 700. I think they're going to be very good. I think the Devin Dampier, the transfer quarterback, is dynamic. I think he's going to be like the surprise player in college football this year. But that also, while that hurts UCLA against Utah, it helps them against New Mexico because that's where Dampier's from. So I think they'll be able to handle New Mexico. The UNLV game's interesting. If Barry Odom was still there, I think that's a game that UNLV could maybe even be a small favorite in. But UNLV is going through a coaching change. They lose some key guys to the portal. And so I think that's a game where you're right, Chip. I think UCLA is going to be a small favorite in that game. And then I know it's cross country. And I know, even in late September, the weather conditions can be a little iffy. But if you can't win at Northwestern off a bye week, you're not going to a bowl game. You're just not. So, I think they go 3-1. I think they'll beat Maryland at home. There's 4. But everything else is boy, you better be ready to go. Everything else, I think they're probably underdogs. So I think we're looking at a scenario where we're talking 4 games maximum that they're favored in. I don't think they'll be favored in any more than 4 of these games. Chip, we've talked about this with USC a little bit. Is there a key point of the season here for you? And please don't steal my pick this time.
All right. Since we don't divulge this kind of information, to me, the game that, just looking at this schedule, I agree with you. I think, losing to Utah in game 1, I'm not saying it's a certainty, but it's a challenging opener. I'm going to say, to me, the key game, looking at UCLA's schedule, October 11th at Michigan State. And the reason why is because both programs are building. It is a cross-country trip. But, for example, the fact that if UCLA is 3-1, as you said, Mark, let's just say that, even though Penn State has to go across the country, Penn State will be favored in that one. I think Michigan State is an opportunity for UCLA to not only go across the country and win, but also that's kind of possibly like a springboard for positive momentum, in the sense that Maryland, we're expecting Maryland to struggle, and the fact that UCLA is hosting them. So UCLA, let's say they're 3-1, they beat Michigan State 4-1, 5-1 Maryland, and then it's a matter of, can they possibly, do they have enough left in the tank down the stretch in November when they're hosting Nebraska, when they host Washington, and that cross city rivalry game with USC. I mean, UCLA played USC tough last year. I'm sure Deshaun Foster will have them ready to go again. So that's, to me, that going back to it, I think the October 11th game at Michigan State is kind of the key one. And I apologize if I took your team.
I told you not to take my pick this time. Next time I'm going first.
Got it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Michigan State is the key game here, because I think there's a good chance they start 3-2. I don't think they're going to be better than 3-2. 4-1 would be surprising to me, but I think they have a good, solid chance to be 3-2 in their first 5. if you lose that Michigan State game, you're not going to a bowl game at that point.
Right.
You're just not. You're not winning. You're not going 3-3 down that stretch. You're just not. But if they win that Michigan State game, you're 4-2, and then you get Maryland at home. So I'm going to give you 5-2 at that point. And then it's like, okay, just find a way. Whether it's Nebraska at home, Washington at home, at the USC, the rivalry game, find a way to get one and get yourself to 6 wins. So I think the Michigan State game makes or breaks their bowl hopes. I really do. I think it's that cut and dry, unless they absolutely flop out of the gates, and then it just doesn't matter. But assuming they are going to be competitive those first 5 games, and I think they can be 3-2 there. That Michigan State game at that point then determines whether they go to a bowl game or not, in my opinion. So I think it's extremely, extremely important. That said, what is, before we get into our best and worst case, what does success look like for you for this UCLA team? Whether that's record, whether that's a more of an eyeball test thing on the field, how would you measure success on the field this year for UCLA, for Deshaun Foster as a second-year coach?
I would definitely say a bowl game appearance of some sort. Obviously the more wins, the more exotic of a bowl game destination. To me, that is, I just think Deshaun Foster, everything about him strikes me as, I want to play a physical style of running the ball, want to have a solid defense. And this is kind of, with the fact that they did not just kind of stand pat. I mean, they went out, they hired Tino Sunseri as their new offensive coordinator. So, obviously the Nico Iamaleava saga, is well documented. But I just think that there's a movement by Deshaun Foster to try to build this program in his what his mind perceives UCLA football should be, which is a physical style of play. And I'm kind of anxious to see if they're going to be able to get it done this coming season.
Yeah, and so we have some similar thoughts there in terms of success. I'm not going to put a record on this. I think they can make strides, look better, be better, and go 5-7 with that schedule than they were last year. I think they can be a better team than they were last year and still go 5-7 this year, just because of the schedule. So I think you kind of hit on it. For me, success is be competitive in a lot of these games where you're maybe not expected to win, but you shouldn't get run off the field. You shouldn't get run off the field by USC. You shouldn't get run off the field, certainly at home against Nebraska. You shouldn't get run off the field at Michigan State. Be competitive where you should be competitive. And offensively, I think you nailed it. Now, there is, I think if we were talking about other things other than just kind of breaking down the schedule, I think the Nico Iamaleava thing is interesting because there's a sweet spot here. You want him to be good, obviously, but if he's great, you're only going to have him for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's bad, that's obviously bad. So there's kind of there's almost some, once he reaches a certain level of good, there's almost diminishing returns after that because you'd like to have him come back. But I think, again, building on what success would look like for me is Tino Sunseri, Nico Iamaleava being looking like they're on the same page, a cohesive unit offensively, improvement offensively, and looking like the offense is continuing to build and move in the right direction. I think is going to be a big thing. You lose Dante Moore, you weren't really able to replace him in the recruiting realm, but you were able to go get Nico, and you're hoping that's a multi-year thing, or else again we're looking here what's UCLA going to do with the quarterback situation? They have to play a young guy next year, so I think there's a lot to kind of digest here in terms of their roster depth, and that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. Is I just don't know this is a program yet that you can come in anywhere as a new coach. You can have some success, especially with the portal now. Kurt Cignetti brings a bunch of his guys with him, and they have a good year at Indiana. You can do that for a year, it's really hard to like patch holes constantly. Like you have to eventually be able to develop and to build the depth within your roster to sustain guys going to the NFL and things of that nature. And so that's going to be the challenge right now for Deshaun Foster, is to get his roster to that point, because that roster was left to him at no fault of his own. And so he's got to kind of retool things and build some more roster depth. So if I see some roster depth where I'm like, oh, these guys, some breakout players, the offense looks like it's, a good cohesive unit. It doesn't, at times over the past couple of years, it's looked completely out of sync. That's a good season for me. And then I think, again, the record is like whatever. Like, obviously bowl game would be fantastic. I think if they make a bowl game, Deshaun Foster's done one of the best coaching jobs in the Big Ten this year. But success could very well look like 5-7 with improvements at key spots. It really could for me. That said, best and worst case scenarios, Chip.
I'm going to say best case scenario. They're going to a bowl game. We already talked about that Michigan State game in October, kind of the linchpin, so to speak, of the season. So let's just say best case scenario that they actually pull off the win in the season opener against Utah. They're 3-0, go on to Northwestern 4. I'm going to say that they get their Magic 6 in the middle of October, and then something I'm going to say best case scenario, this team wins 7 games. Just based on the talent, because he's brought in a lot of people via the transfer portal. Like I said, the coaching staff completely, got rid of Eric Bieniemy, brought in Tino Sinceri, new quarterback, all that. So I think best case scenario is 7 wins. I'd say worst case scenario is, I'm going to say, maybe like 4 wins, and that Indiana game at the end of October, that could be a bad situation, simply because that was when last year when Indiana came out to UCLA, Indiana just took UCLA behind the woodshed, so to speak, and it kind of got things spiraling in a bad direction for UCLA. So I'm going to say best case 7, worst case is probably about 4 wins.
We're close. I don't think this is going to happen, but I do see a 3-9 path. Like, things aren't clicking early. I don't think they're going to beat Utah. But could they drop at Michigan State, or, even like, could they drop at UNLV? Yeah, they could. So I could see a path where they start 0-2, and that just puts them in a really tough spot to dig out of before they get to, some winnable Big Ten games like Northwestern and Maryland. So I could theoretically see 3-9. That being said, I think 6-6 is probably their ceiling. 7 wins may get me, like, we'll do our like awards after the season. I think we'll sit down and be like, oh, who's your Big Ten player of the year? Who's your coach of the year? If Deshaun Foster goes 7-5, he's in my discussion for Big Ten coach of the year. I think 6 is probably the ceiling. I don't think it's that insane, but like, I think we're looking at a 4 or 5 win team here. As I throw this back up here, they're going to beat New Mexico. They're going to beat Northwestern. They're going to beat Maryland. They're probably going to beat UNLV. And it's like, okay, what do you do against UNLV and Michigan State? Yeah. Can you win both? And if you win both of those, then you can probably beat Nebraska at home or have a shot at USC. And if you split, you're probably, you're a 4 or 5 win team. So that's kind of what I see. I get it. 9, best case 6-6, but I think I think they're going to be in the middle of that. I think they're probably a 4. I think we're looking at a 4 or 5 win team.
Yeah, I mean they beat UCLA beat Nebraska last year in Lincoln.
Yep. We're both projecting Nebraska to be much improved this year, but that's still, something that could happen again.
Rosters, the like the USC game is something that, I think you throw out the record, and USC won last year, but I think UCLA is certainly capable of going into the Memorial Coliseum and winning it. So who knows? I mean, I definitely think I agree with you. I think the talent level is kind of there for like 4 or 5 wins, but this team also can show improvement, like kind of what they did last year. Like like they were on a losing streak, and then all of a sudden, I don't want to say that they caught fire, but they improved to the point where it was kind of like, okay, we're going in the right direction.
No question. So we will see what year 2 of the Deshaun Foster era looks like. Interesting start to the season at Utah. That would be a great game for the for like the fans of college football to watch. It'll be the nightcap to an awesome first week of college football. There's some big time national games that week, so we look forward to kind of checking that out. That'll be one of the games I'm sure we talk about in our week 1 reaction show is the UCLA Utah game. So looking forward to that, obviously, and we'll see what direction Deshaun Foster has things moving in Westwood. So thanks everyone again for watching and listening. We got 2 of these left, so we'll be back with another one here soon.